Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the summit. And I have to say, I'm ecstatic about welcoming our next guest. Keith Abraham, not only does he have a wonderful Australian accent, he is the bestseller of 5 books. And on top of that, he has spoken at across 41 countries and to audiences of about 1.7 million people. So I know a lot of people that are just getting started listening to this, like, wow, that's a lot. Is this guy going to be able to teach me how to practically, start my speaking business? Well, the truth is he does that and teaches other people that are doing amazingly well all day, every day. And that's why, he's a Hall of Fame speaker. He's won so many awards. But what I love about Keith is specifically what makes him impressive is he gets his clients to keep coming back. He has a 93% return ratio, but on top of that, he's got over a 50% return ratio for more than 6 visits, which is just mind-blowing. So, Keith, I hope I haven't built you up too much, mate. You've got a lot to deliver on today, but I really appreciate you coming on, mate. Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew. It's great to be with you and great to share a few ideas, a few insights, and a little bit of inspiration to people. When I got started 28 years ago, it was trial and error, a baptism of fire, and I think one of the things the things that I talk to about emerging speakers is exactly the basics that I do myself, because you can't do this business for 28 years without going back to the basics, reinventing yourself, and building that longevity into your messages and your content. So great to be able to share a few things with people, help them on their speaking journey.
One of the things that I love about everything you talk about, Keith, is you actually talk about the business of speaking. And I think that there are 2 dichotomies of groups that come into the speaking space. There's a group of people that they just want to be on stage and they want to share stuff. And then there's other people that actually want to create a career and a real business. And I know that you definitely focus on the latter. And I see a lot of people that when they first start a business of speaking, they think when they just start speaking, they think it's just about getting on stage and doing great work, and then the money will just come, and it's going to be a wonderful, job or career to have. Can you confront that reality for people and help people realize what they're actually supposed to do?
Yeah, absolutely. Firstly, I just think there's 2 levers you have to pull. One is the business of speaking, and then making sure you're a world-class professional speaker. And they go hand in hand, but they're 2 different things. And I learned this early on. It was a great lesson, Matthew. I went out, 0 clients, no client base, and I went out and I just marketed and had lots of coffees with people, and I had a network of people that I knew, and I'd have a coffee with them to say, who do you know that could benefit from me being, presenting to them? And of course, guess what happened? I got booked. And my calendar filled up, and I started delivering all these presentations, and then guess what happened? I had nothing because I stopped marketing. And it was then that I realised that I had to do 2 things. I had to be really good as a presenter, or as best I could be as a presenter when I first started, and then also keep the business of the business going. And I think there's 3 things that every speaker needs to do if they want to have longevity in the business. They need to continue to work on the attraction. So in other words, how do I attract inquiries? They need to work on convert. How do I convert those inquiries into bookings? And then they need to work on delivery. And the delivery of, let me deliver great value, let me deliver a great presentation, but let me deliver a presentation that generates rivers of referrals and repeat bookings. And so the one thing I talk to lots of speakers about is that one model of attract, convert, deliver. Because if I keep on doing that, I keep on evolving. The other thing I'd say, Matthew, and you and I were chatting about this, is that I think I became very, very good at the business of speaking, understanding it, processes, systems, strategy, sales, marketing, staying in touch with clients. I became very good at that. And I reckon about 15 years ago, I went, I have to take myself to the next level as a professional speaker. You can't not become good at something if you do it over and over and over again. But then I invested. I worked with 6 world-class presenter coaches. I worked with a lady in the States called Patricia Fripp. She was my first coach and gave me great ability for structure. I work with a guy here in Australia called Colin James, who's masterful at being able to weave messages and engaging audiences. I work with a guy called Alan Parker, which was all around, gestures and that type of the ability to just use your body in a different way. I work with a guy called Peter Kingston, and Peter, nobody knows Peter Kingston, but he was the director of NIDA here in Australia, which is National Institute of Performing Arts, and everybody. His was just about stage presence, but here's who he's trained: Hugh Jackman, Russell Crowe, Nicole Kidman, Margot Robbie. He trained all those people. So when I worked with him just on stage presence, and I worked with a lovely couple on storytelling, Troy and Zara. And why did I do that? Because I wanted to become better as a presenter. So I've got a pretty rock solid business now. Let me become better as a presenter.
I think that's really interesting though, because what you said is I built a business and then I got better at being a presenter. And one thing is, firstly, running the business of speaking allows you to pay for all those extra trainings and things that a lot of people perhaps may not have. But then secondly, the business of speaking is far more important than, as long as you've got good content, the fundamentals around being an amazing speaker is what gets you to the next level, but it's definitely not what starts the business. I think that's what a lot of people really get wrong. So I'm really interested in kind of delving into this, because when you talk about the business of speaking, a lot of people think that the business of speaking is speaking from stage. And I think you and I have talked many times offline that, I've actually delivered a presentation for the National Speakers Association where I'm like, put your hand up if all you do is speak. And a whole bunch of hands go up. And I'm like, you just can't compete with people like you, Keith, or people like me if all you do is that, because our budgets are bigger. Like, I love getting paid to speak from stage, but the truth is it's a podium that allows me to then sell so much else while I'm there. And I know that your background has led you to sell millions of dollars from stage, and even millions of dollars from single clients. Help people understand why it's so important to not just really consider themselves just, a single speaker.
Yeah, well, you're right about the budgets, Matthew. My whole thing is I don't have thousands of clients. I have hundreds of clients. And the reason why is a little bit like this. If I can draw this, Matthew, the reason why is, if you think of it, this is what I look at, and people talk about sales funnels all the time, but really you think this is the presentation, this is your product. And for me, I look to sell programs. So your product could be anything. Product could be, your books or your online course or whatever it might be. The presentation, my whole goal is to work people down to here. And, and you think, well, I'm just a keynote. Yeah, but you could still sell a product. You could still sell an online program. You could still sell a quarterly come in and momentum session, but I just think that when you have this bigger picture, you're right. I work with bigger budgets. For me, I always believe, Matthew, that the real key for me, and I think of it like this, is in every room is 3 more presentations, minimum of 3 more presentations. The client should use you again. The client should then also use you in a different environment, their retreat, their senior executive team, or another division in that room will go, oh, I need you to come and do our Kickstart meeting. And the third one is a random. The third one is the lady from, who's a business development manager, in their Northwest division, comes up to you and says, look, I actually don't organise conferences, Keith, and I actually have no pull or authority or influence, but my partner is the head of da-da-da-da-da, and they need somebody like you at their next conference. The client should, and I suppose the fourth one there, which you haven't covered, is I believe the measure of any great speaker is just 2 things. Does your client return, and do they recommend? And people think of that, Matthew, as they have a chance strategy around that. If I'm really good, the client will refer me. No, I've got a process. I've got a process that I make sure that I get 3 referrals from every client. Why? Because that just fills the pipeline.
Yeah, I do like the fact that you're methodical about it, though, Keith. One of the things, and I stole this from you, by the way. So, one of the things, we have a mutual friend, Terry, that said, I was speaking to Keith, and he said he does this, and you've got to try it. And so I started to say during my presentation, if I had more time, I'd go into more detail in this. And it just seeds the fact that you have a whole other topic you'd love to talk about. And by doing that, all of a sudden, I had all this extra content that people were asking for. So instead of me trying to say, oh, I've got other presentations or I've got other things that I do, they were coming to me with those opportunities. And such a subtle change makes such a difference to the end result that you have with people chasing you for additional presentations or doing those introductions.
Yeah, absolutely. And just, the other thing there as well, Matthew, is everything that when I present with models. So, when I do my keynote, which is all about helping people to achieve their goals faster, easier and better, I have a model. And the model is memorable milestones, momentum mindset, mastering monofocus. And off that runs 3 chunks of content. But when people see that model and you sort of go, and then on top of it, you say, if we had more time, we'd dig into, how to starve your distractions and feed your focus, or how to, have this resilient, people go, oh, my sales team need that, and that's where they come back and it's not greasy and it's not slimy. It's just, if I had more time, I could spend an hour just on that one circle. And so all of a sudden people see the potential to utilize you again and understand this. People go, oh, I just need to do that. Now, I know you well enough, Matthew, that you have a whole system and process. Just like me, there's 16 steps from the moment I take the briefing call to 3 months after the conference is finished. I have a 16-step process that generates a referral, that leads me into an opportunity to offer a $500, $600 million program, to that a leadership program to that client. And I've just learned that, I've been doing it for 28 years. You learn things along the way. You go, oh, I'm never doing that again, because it didn't work. But this is I can hear the people, I just want to be a keynote. Well, wouldn't it be easy just to pick up 4 more keynotes from every presentation you do? Wouldn't it be easier to, I'm not saying go and do the whole, create product and do a program or anything like that. I just know that. But most people don't do that, Matthew. Most people, they turn up and they're well prepared and they're well dressed and they rock up and they deliver a great presentation, they accept the applause, they shake people's hands, slap people on the back and leave and go, oh, that client will be back in touch with me. No, they won't. 3 months later, they will have forgotten your name. They could have been chanting your name, standing on chairs, but 3 months later, because ask this question, Matthew, and I know you asked this question. I always ask the question, who did you have last time? Oh, we had a fabulous speaker, Keith. Oh, they were so good. Our people loved him. Oh, really? Who was it? Geez. Oh, God, she was so good. I'd have to look up the file. Why? Because that client had 1,000 more emails from that moment, from that time that you walked us the stage, and they had to remember your name. And that's why you have to be, that's why you have to be memorable for all the right reasons. You've got to stay top of mind.
Well, I think you and I also look at it the same way, that we see our job as a speaker is to motivate and inspire people to take action. And we also want them to take action and get the outcome. So if you don't take responsibility for that, not only are you getting extra keynotes out of it, you're actually taking responsibility for the outcome, and your programs are taking responsibility for the outcome. I mean, I remember when I first started, and you and I had a different trajectory to getting started. I remember you saying, you did lots of different presentations and then realized that wasn't the way forward and you could focus. I, on the other hand, I had one keynote. I was an introverted guy that was uncomfortable, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to have one presentation and I'm going to say, and I loved this skill set once I learned it, which was tell people they don't need to hire me. What they need to do is download this template. And of course that led to everybody wanting to hire me. So I found that I could go and speak one presentation and get 5, 6, 10 clients from just speaking in a group of 200 people. But I started with just one primary presentation, but I wanted to take responsibility of getting those people to take an outcome if that's what they chose to do, and which is why I sold coaching in the back end. I want to come to this topic because I know that you're really focused on connecting passion, personal passion and professional passion and that's what leads to unparalleled momentum. And for me, that's the reason I went with one keynote when I first started, because I said, well, I want to help people get rapid growth. This is the keynote. This is the coaching. This is what I want to spend the rest of my life doing.
Yes.
And I feel like what happens when people get into speaking is they say, oh, I'm a speaker, but they don't pick a topic. So people keep saying, well, can you talk on this? Can you talk on this? Next thing you know, they've got 27 keynotes, none of which they get to deliver very often. And because of that, the business of speaking becomes exhausting. Do you get a lot of people that you work with that struggle with that, where they talk on too many topics and it gets overcomplicated?
Oh, yeah. I do some, as you mentioned before, I do some coaching of speakers, and you go on their website and they got 6 different keynotes and they've got 25 points under each of them, and the client looks at them and goes, it's too many choices. But if I was going to do it all over again, I would have I'd do your model. I'd have one presentation. It'll be an inch wide. It'll be a mile deep of research and understanding and growth and development, all in that one topic. That's what I would have done, and be famous for something. Not try and please everybody. I turn away work to colleagues because I go, Keith, could you do something on sales for our team? You know what? Of course I can, but I don't want to. The first book I wrote was Creating Loyal, Profitable Customers. You sort of can't pay me enough money to do that content. Not that I don't think the content is valuable and it is all about getting people to come back. It's just, it doesn't float my boat. And I'd rather give that to someone who's a specialist at it, who's passionate about it and energized, engaged about it. So that would be the advice I'd give anybody starting out: is pick one thing, be famous at it, create content, articles, social posts, just become the guru of that in the eyes of the people who are your potential purchasers. So, and I think a little bit, Matthew, one of the things that, you talk about with people is, if I can do a teaching moment, one of the things that, this is the thing I say to people is that there are 3 things you need to master: profile, pipeline, product, which was really attract, convert, and deliver, just with some fancy names. And if you think of it, when attract, who's your ideal prospect? Who's your ideal client? Who's your ideal conference? Write down 100 conferences you want to speak at, and then start putting a process in. And I'm happy to share with you one client that I've stayed in touch with for 16 years. 16 years of no's before they engaged me. Then sort of go, okay, what's my positioning? What do I want to be famous for? And then make sure you've got a process in place to do the outreach. And people rely a lot on LinkedIn. I do everything. I make calls, I send text messages. But the one thing I say, be consistent. So I say to people, if you want to build your business, contact 7 people every day, 5 days a week. That's 35 people. Guess what's going to happen? 35. Someone's going to say yes. Somebody's going to say yes. And then when you talk about convert, and like you, I'm an extrovert as well. And one of the things that I say here about convert, is that this is about having conversations with people. The more conversations I have, I never consider myself selling anything. But what I do is I have conversations with people and I ask them good quality questions. And then from that, you get the opportunity to convert. And then to stay in touch with people. Be consistent, because you contact someone and they're not ready or they don't need you. And, one of the things that we were talking about this before. I stayed in touch with a client for 16 years. 16 years of no's. Now, it was never no get lost. It was just, no, we're going to use somebody from the US. No, we're going to use some internal people. No, your topic's not right for this event and theme. 16 years of no. On the 16th year, 17th year, I should say, they contacted me and said, are you available to speak at this conference for 1,500 people? I said, yep, sure. Looked at the calendar, it all worked out. That was about 8 years ago now. I just clocked up my 46th conference with them globally. They've been a client that has invested about 1.25 million with me, from everything from diagnostics to keynotes to back of room sales, front of room sales, just because I stayed in touch with them. And then the last piece, just so people know that I do have some content, is the last piece is, are you referable? Are you memorable? And what you're doing, is it repeatable? In other words, can I go back and work with that client again and again and again? And that's the thing. If you master those three, you'll have an absolutely fabulous business with great income, with a great pipeline. The scariest thing for most speakers is, I've got nothing in the pipeline. I've got nothing booked.
What kills me about people that say I've got nothing booked and nothing in the pipeline is the moment you ask them, going back to your 3 points, who have they contacted recently? And the answer is, oh, no, I went to a few network events. Who have you followed up with? What past clients have you called? Who have you asked for referrals? And the answer is none. And you're like, well, that's why you've got nothing in the pipeline. You've not done any activities. Oh, but I just want to speak. Well, yeah, okay, but to speak, you have to run the business. Otherwise, you're reliant. And I know a lot of people say, I want to be repped by a speaker bureau. The truth is, a lot of those groups, they're only going to rep you once people want you. And the fact is that you have to bring yourself up to that point where you will get repped by groups like that. And even then, they're not going to feed your entire income. They're going to bring you the occasional deal, and they're going to expect you have those other parts around product nailed, so that you're actually providing them a repeatable process that you can keep coming back and you can keep booking them for other gigs. Otherwise, next time they'll just book someone else. So I feel like every single one of those steps, if you don't understand them, you shouldn't be going out. There's a lot of hustle that people put in before they really understand the fundamentals that you've put out there.
Well, even let's say that somebody says, look, I want to be represented by a bureau. The model still works, because you want to get a referral and feed it back to the client. You want to, your prospect is every consultant working in all those different bureaus that are representing you, and you build a relationship with 100 consultants in the marketplace, and you go, okay, I'm going to love on them, and they're going to feed me. Now, here's the other thing I'd say: if you don't have that in place, here's what happens: is you become not the next best thing. All of a sudden, what happens is there's somebody who's written a book on your topic, and they become the next best thing, and they become exclusive for that bureau. So the bureau's got to feed them before they feed you. I'm a better speaker than them, Keith. Doesn't matter. And all of a sudden you are leaving your business to chance. You're not making a choice. You're not making a deliberate choice to build it.
It's really interesting. I've got an article on my website called "Do You Have a Small Business or a Gambling Addiction?" And I feel that a lot of people that don't have these systems and processes, they're gambling their energy, their family's finances on this dream of being a pop star, as opposed to building a business that really has all the fundamentals of any other business. It has to have repeat clients, i.e. it has to deliver a great repeatable service. It has to have fundamentals of outreach, and it has to make sure that the product is good.
Yeah, 100%. The thing I say to lots of speakers early on in their career is, be great at sales and marketing before you're actually great at speaking. Because if you can have the best presentation in the world, but if nobody's buying it because you're not doing the outreach or anything like that, then you will starve. To be perfectly honest, you'll be the best speaker on your block of land. And so I just I'm really conscious about making sure that people treat it like a business. And if you're going to treat it like a business, then how do I build longevity into it? How do I and some people go, but I'm not very good at sales. I'm not very good at sales either. What I do is I just have conversations with people. And if I think I can help them, I tell them. If I think I can't help them, I say, look, you should be talking to Matthew, or you should be talking to Jane. And I just, I be of value. I just had one of my best mates who runs a company, and he said, our people need you, Keith. I said, I need you to talk to the director of sales and the head of people and big company, And you know, if he would have said to him, "You got to employ Keith," they'd employ Keith. But I said, "No, I want to talk to them because they're the stakeholders." And so when I chatted with them after the conversation and my questioning process, the discovery process, they don't need sales training. They need, you know, which is not my thing anyway. They don't need. They want conflict resolution. You know, they want people to be able to negotiate and handle. You know, there's objections. And I said, you need to talk to a guy called, you know, Brad. You know, Brad's the guru in this. So I referred him on to that. Why? Because I don't want to damage that relationship. They'll use me further down the track. You got to play the long game, and so it's not about sales. It's about, you know, outreach and have conversations with people.
Yeah, you know, it's really interesting, and for those people that are listening, like there are two things that are going on in two different dialogues. One is don't sell something you don't want to do and you're not great at, and think about the long game in that play. But then also sell it first, build it later is one of the old sayings that used to happen in sales and marketing. So think about it. I understand that kind of plays against what you heard in the first statement, because you're like, well, if I'm not a great speaker, I'm going to get on stage, I'm not going to deliver, and then I'm going to not be able to get a client. But they're going to call you and they're going to say, look, we have a gig coming up in 6 months' time or 3 months' time. Can you deliver this content? If it's congruent with you and you're an expert in it, you spend the next 3 months prepping for that presentation. But what most people get wrong is they say, no, I'm going to get good at being a speaker and then I'm going to go and get speaking deals. And the problem is it's the wrong way around, because you may spend all this time preparing for a keynote you're never going to get to deliver, as opposed to one that you've learned fits the customer's requirements.
And very rarely, Matthew, very rarely do, you know, as a new speaker, do you get the opportunity to stand in front of 1,000 people for your first gig. Now, I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but that, you know, it's standing in front of 20 people, 10 people, 6 people sitting around a boardroom table, and that's where you learn. You can have the best presentation known to mankind, and have presented it in your office, your studio, to the mirror, whatever it is. It's a totally different kettle of fish when you go to present, you know, to a real live audience. And it's not so much, is the audience tough? No, but understand this: there's lots of conference goers that have seen lots of speakers. So the ability to have those runs on the boards in smaller rooms, you know, like I cut my teeth in small rooms, not in big conferences, you know, where the power went out, where, you know, somebody got pulled out of the meeting. You know, I spoke at a conference, and just before I was due to speak, the CEO stood up and, you know, did hi everybody, here's an update about the business. Here's what we're going to have to do. On Monday, a third of you will be let go. And, you know, if you need any questions, just talk to the HR, you know, your HR coordinator in your department at your site. Anyway, let me introduce Keith. He's going to talk to you about inspiring you to achieve things in your life.
Wow.
You know,
yeah.
And
I
the
get
only
it.
way you
I get it.
The only way you get good at handling that, is speaking in lots in front of people and saying, you know, what happens if somebody falls over? What happens if somebody, you know, I've had somebody have a heart attack in the room. I've had, you know, there's been somebody injured on the way to the event. You know, fatal injury on the way to the event. You know, how do you handle that? And so that comes with experience and time.
Yeah.
So the more you go, you know,
agree.
I know this sounds so basic, you know, but the more you speak, the more you speak.
Mate, I almost tripped on a microphone because it was one of those old cables when I first started. And I learned to be careful with your footing. Like, you know, these things happen. I mean, especially when you're an emerging speaker, you got to do the grunt work. Like I you know, one of my first keynotes, I think actually it was my first keynote in America, was to 220 people. And the stage was only about 4 foot wide. And I must have lapped that thing every second and a half. I was just walking up and down and up and down and up and down.
Yeah. The cage line.
Yeah, exactly. It just comes with practice. But I feel that, you know, what you've shared is really valuable to the audience today, Keith. And I feel that a lot of people that hear this stuff, they may say, well, this stuff is fundamental for any business, but yet they're not doing it. And so knowing it and doing it and applying it are two very, very different things. And I know, Keith, you spend a you spend your lifetime now really not just speaking and doing high level gigs, but actually teaching speakers themselves. So I'd love for you to, just share, like, if there was one resource or one thing that you would suggest takes people out of this. These are all great concepts, but I'm not applying them, and I'm just not getting them done. So, okay, I've hit my first milestone. I feel like I've built momentum and I'm moving forward. What would that resource, or what would you recommend? Where would they go from here in your world?
Yeah, in my world, mate, just to reach out and let's have a conversation, and if I can help them on that journey. So, but let me be even a little bit more broader than that. Firstly, if you do not have a coach and a mentor in this speaking business, the only reason I'm standing here, Matthew, the only reason I'm sharing this is I've had great mentors, great coaches along the way. So if you want to accelerate, elevate, activate your true potential, then you have to have a coach and a mentor. From the speaking side of things. The second thing I'd say is I wrote this book during COVID, and look, COVID was a different thing for everybody. For me, it was great. COVID was great, and not initially. I lost 70 conferences in 10 days, so that was but I had this ability to build a studio and so I had this ability to be able to present to people and sort of make this the best learning experience possible. But I did have a whole stack of time up my sleeve because I wasn't traveling as much, and I always wanted to write this book, which is called the Million Dollar Speaker Playbook. And you might go, I don't want to earn $1 million. Well, this is everything I've learned along the way, and I put it into this great book, and you can buy it from the website, and we'll ship it to you and things like that. But it talks about those things that you need to do to really put the business basics in place. So happy for people to jump on board with that, and if you sort of want a little mini version of that, we can always send that to you as well. So that'd be two things. The other thing I'd say is, if you're not a member of the National Speakers Association in the US, or in whatever country you're in, Australia or in the UK or in Asia, in Singapore, go along to that, because that's your tribe. That's your tribe of people who will know what you go through and get it. That'd be the three things that I do, and that I continue to do.
I think that's great advice, Keith. And I know, as a member of the National Speakers Association myself, when I first went, there were a lot of people that I met that I was like, I don't know if this person really knows anything about speaking. And then I ran into a couple of people that did. And some of the advice I got was transformative. And advice I wouldn't have expected, like moving my personal story away from the very beginning of my presentation, or embracing the obvious, and the pauses, all the little things that don't occur to you unless you're in and around those types of people. So I absolutely agree with you on that. And I really appreciate you being so generous with your time, Keith. For those people that are trying to find you in the world and online, do you suggest your LinkedIn profile, your website? Where would you suggest they go?
Yeah, keithabraham.com. You can send me a message from there. You can go to Keith Abraham CSP on LinkedIn, and you can send me a message there. Somebody will answer the message, and if you want to have a conversation with me about the work I do, I coach a number of people in the US, I coach a number of people all over the world, speakers all over the world, and so that's the easiest way. Or you can just send me an email, ka@keithabraham.com.au, and we can start a conversation. And like anything, Matthew, like you, if I think I can help people, I'll tell them. If I think they're not, if they need to work with somebody else, I say, you probably need to work with Patricia, or you probably need to work with Amanda, or whoever it might be. So yeah, but that's how you find it.
That's perfect. Well, Keith, thank you very much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And for those people that are tuning into this summit, thank you so much for tuning in. And we so hope you're getting value from this content. We look forward to seeing you in the next one. Cheers, everyone.